Hello and welcome to The Week That Was, a weekly program on which we review the headlines of the week. This week again we pick up the headlines from Herald, the voice of Goa, and to discuss these headlines and the stories and analysis behind these headlines, I have with me the group editor of Herald publication, Mr. Sujay Gupta. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
On 2nd of May, that's Monday, Herald has this headline: the President of India's office wants action on the petition against Goa cop Sagar Ekoskar. Now, to the uninitiated, Sagar Ekoskar has had a colorful past, and he is also accused of assaulting the farmer leader Hanuman Parab, who was in custody in Valpoi.
See, Freddie, the thing is, when it comes to police officers, and we also have this love and hate or love and like relationship with a lot of cops. The thing that needs to be said is that yes, we do understand that often police officers are castigated by people, okay, and they are blamed unnecessarily. But at the same time, there are various police officers from time to time. They indulge themselves in activities that are absolutely unbecoming of the position that they hold. And obviously that is why this whole term controversial cops comes into being.
Yeah.
There are some people who are trigger happy, there are some people who are fist happy, there are some people who are stick happy, but at the same time, there are other cops who are fine, who are perfect gentlemen.
Yeah.
Without casting any definitive aspersions on Sagar Ekoskar's character, we need to look at the controversies that they've been involved in.
Yeah.
The number of times when people have complained against them for their acts of omission and commission. The number of times people have said that this particular officer has been high-handed. He's been vociferous. He's been unfair. And when you have these kind of complaints coming against some particular officers, then obviously there is some smoke.
Yeah.
Which we need to look at. And Sagar Ekoskar unfortunately happens to be a cop like this, and is still fresh from the charges of he assaulting a farmer leader, Hanuman Parab, in his custody in Pesurle. And that was not an ordinary assault, it was a brutal assault. Hanuman Parab was there in these very studios, and sitting here he spoke, narrated so eloquently, but with a lot of pain in his heart, on how he was thrashed in custody.
Yeah.
Now, we also know that the complaint is with the SP North. The complaint is with the DGP. Several petitions have been made. Hanuman Parab himself has written. A so-called inquiry was lodged against him. Okay, that inquiry never saw the light of day. No people have been examined. Statements have not been recorded, and thus that inquiry has actually become a complete farce. So you have a PI of a police station and a DYSP who is Sagar Ekoskar, both of them roaming around with these serious charges against them, and there has been no action from on the part of the state. So obviously this is absolutely shocking, and Herald as a newspaper will see to that we get to the bottom of this, or at least there should be a semblance of justice being shown.
On the same day, we have another story where these Casarvane villagers have launched this novel Jal Andolan, and they remained in the water for 5 hours to oppose this project, which they believe will supply and divert water to the Mopa airport to Tia industrial estate and deprive the villagers of their source of water.
5 महिने होय ह्या प्रोजेक्टा खातीर हाल अपेश्टन लोकांक उलो मारता, सगळ्या पेडणेकरांक सांगता की हे पाणी वाचयात म्हणा. ही न्हंय आमच्या सगळ्या पेडणेकारा खातीर आहा, ही नुसती कासरण्याच्या आनी बैलपराच्या लोकां खातीर ना. हे जे पाणी आहा हेच पाणी संबंध केरी, मोरजी, हरमल, माजऱ्या पर्यंत हे न्हंयचे पाणी लोकांक 15 ml पुरयता आहा, आणि सध्या हे न्हंय 5 ml पाणी ना. आता जर पंप स्टार्ट जाती आणि जर हे फक्त एअरपोर्टाक दिती जाल्यार हे जे माजरे मोरजीचे पाणयाचे लोक फटफटतले, कित्याक पाणी म्हणून वळवळटले, कित्याक आणि पाणयाची काय थंय सोय ना. समज तो कॅनलाचे सुद्दां पाणी बंद जालें जाल्यार पाणी ना. सध्या जे पाणी दिता लोकांक ते कॅनलाक, हे जर 15 ml 2 पंप चालेला जर स्टार्ट जाल्यार हिसर थेंबभर उदक हे न्हंय नसतले.
ना हांव तुमकां एकूच सांगता पळय, हांव तांकां हाडटा म्हाज्या ऑफिसान, हांव बसयता, तुमी येयात म्हाज्या ऑफिसान, हांव आसतलो, आमी तांकां घेवन बसया, आमचें कितें प्रॉब्लम आहा तांकां सांगया, तेंचें कितें म्हणजे तेंच्यांनी हो प्रोजेक्ट केला पळय तो आमच्या फायद्याक हा काय त्यांच्या फायद्याक हा तो जाणून घेवया. फाल्यां सकाळीं आमच्या फायद्याक ना जाल्यार प्रोजेक्ट बंद घालपाक हांव तुमच्या वांगडा आसा.
ओके सर, आमकां हेच जाय सर. ओके सर,
ओके,
थँक्यू सर.
This has been an ongoing agitation going on in the Perne area, and there is an advocate who's leading the whole agitation. Plus, there are others as well. The fact of the matter, as viewers may or may not know, the problem is that when you build this big pump house on that river, the water is actually meant to be sucked out and fed into large buildings, large complexes. It'll feed into the water pipelines of the upcoming Mopa airport. There are going to be large commercial complexes and residential complexes there. So when you're taking the water from such a small source, and Casarvane is not a big village, or the river is not a huge river.
Yeah.
But when you do something like this, what happens is you're depleting the groundwater resources and taking it away from the traditional community who've been living there, who have every right to that source of water.
And who would have preserved it.
So you not only are you not getting that water, the water is actually being taken out. I'm not saying that it is illegal, but when you do something like this, you must see the availability of water and what it will do to the local population, because you just can't ride roughshod on them in this kind of a manner. So, and I think the Andolan was very unique. The Jal Andolan was a very interesting way to protest, and ultimately it is these people's protests which ultimately bear fruit, as we have seen.
Okay, moving on to 3rd May, we have a headline on the front page of Herald. Vishwajit controlled NGPDA asks Mapsa police to file an FIR against ex-minister Michael Lobo.
मिनिस्टर फॉर टाउन अँड कंट्री प्लॅनिंग विश्वजीत राणे यांच्यानी एक फेसबुकाचेर आणि ट्विटर हेचेर सोशल मिडियाचेर एक पोस्ट घातलेलो आहा. सगळ्यांक दिसता पळय पोस्ट. हो पोस्ट घातला आणि तो म्हणटा इन वायलेशन ऑफ सेक्शन 17A and 17B of TCP Act 1974. An FIR has been filed against Shri Michael Lobo and his wife, Srimati Delilah Lobo, for land filling and tree cutting in Parra. The Congress party's vision for destruction of the state of Goa will never be reality. Facebookaचेरय सांगला, ट्विटराचेरय सांगला, सगळ्या वाटेन सांगला, सोशल मिडियाचेर सांगला की I will file FIR against my TCP officials, PDA officials आणि हे आणि ते तेंका काल भेकडायला तेणे. कित्याक भेकडायला तेणी काल तेंका? म्हाजेर आयज FIR घालपाक. एक पोस्ट चालू आहा ती हिंगा कांयच दिसना. ही सीन हिंगा सोडली नाच. सर्वे नंबर घालिना. आमकां डिफेम करपाचो प्रयत्न चालू आहा. कित्याक चालू आहा? whether they don't want us to be leader of opposition, whether they don't want opposition in the state of Goa, or whether he is in a race of something else beyond what he is right now. तो कितें तरी प्रूव करूंक सोदता गोंयच्या लोकांक आनी गोंया भायर आसतलो कोणाक तरी लिडरांक दाखोवंक सोदता आसतलो की आपूण काम करपाक चालू केलें म्हणून वर्क. जाल्यार वॉट this Mr. Rane has got to do with that? I don't understand. I don't have any personal rivalry against him.
See, what do you make of it? See, at one level, one would like to see it, or at least the minister would like to see it as a proactive action on his part to rid the system of corruption. That's one way, the charitable way of looking at it. But the more pragmatic, practical, and the real way of looking at it is by asking just one simple question. If Michael Lobo was not a Congress member and not a leader of the opposition, can continue to be a part of the BJP, would Vishwajit Rane have done this?
Yeah.
All we need to do is to ask ourselves this question. If the answer to that is yes, then Vishwajit Rane is an absolute hero for doing it. If the answer to that is no, then we know the exact reasons why he's doing this. There's nothing more to be said, because these kind of illegalities are absolutely rampant all over Goa. Kalangut can be one example. Talegaon can be another example. You have examples galore. From Talegaon, and you look to the east, look to the west, there is a large amount of illegal land conversions, land filling going on everywhere down in the countryside. You look at panchayats all across, and the issue is, don't we know what happened in Serula? Don't we know what happened in Salvador Moon? Don't we know what's happening in Talegaon? So it happens. It's happening everywhere. the idea is that whenever you take these kind of decisions and actions, it has to be done with a genuine purpose. If it is done with a genuine purpose, people will respect and worship you.
Okay, on 3rd May itself, there is this peculiar problem which is haunting most of our towns now, and Panjim in particular. That is, the Herald had highlighted the huge influx of beggars, and this is an issue of great concern because it is acquiring some commercial kind of nuances.
See, this is not a new menace. It's been going on for a very long time. You can make out that they are part of organized gangs. There is a control system there. They are picking up money. We also know for a fact that a lot of that goes as hafsa to the powers that be. It is a full-fledged nexus that go on. They are traders by daytime and they are beggars by evening. In the morning, you'll have the same people coming and selling bangles and other wares. Yeah. They quickly turn into beggars at about 4:35 in the evening. So this is not something that I am saying or you are saying. It is very well documented, mentioned by the CCP itself.
Yeah.
So the issue is that if they know the problem, then the solution is also at hand. The very fact that you're not willing to solve this for years and years shows that there is some problem in your intention itself. So once that happens, of course it is, because for a town like Panjim, which is the seat of tourist attraction, there are so many people who come visit. So you need to kind of clear the area from beggars. At the same time, if they are locals who are forced to beg and they are not locals, we know that. But in case there is an element of truth to it, or in case there is some shelter needed, some protection needed, the children need to be looked after, purely on humanitarian grounds, that can be done. But don't allow this racket to happen. That is the problem. That this has become more of a racket than anything.
And it's a shame because, especially because Goa is being projected as the #1 tourist destination in Goa, and the cops are not willing to crack down on this.
That is true, and they're not willing to crack down because there are obviously other interests involved. So, which is why this happened.
Okay, on May 4th, we have a headline, banner headline, in fact, where 3 workers have died in a major explosion at Zoria Agro, and the hunch is that the supervisors were not in place and the workers were doing all by themselves, using their common sense in order to deal with the plant and the work that they were doing.
Shutdown on from 30th April. So this is our annual maintenance shutdown. So a condensate tanker job chaltalo contractor. So when the job was going on, so एक बारीकसो blast जालो. तातूंत 3 fatalities जाली. The contractor was working with due permissions and all of it. And because this is an annual shutdown, an investigation is on. So people from factory boilers are there. Deputy collector is there. Police also is there. But they are investigating.
So it is same tweet केला की ammonia tank blast झाला.
No, ammonia tank. It is a condensate tank. Condensate. So कोणते ammonia? I don't know how it got to it. It's a condensate where steam is there.
आणि किती झाले केन्ना झाले आणि
happened at around 2:45. So 2:45 when they were working on the tank, they have to work on the tank for removing. This is a shutdown tank, so the tank has to be inspected. So when they were removing the nozzle, so the tank cover, so that time while they were it got ignited with some gas. This got cutting, cutting. So that's the reason it got blast. But investigation is on what exactly must have become the reason. So that is what they are going to hear.
आयज पळय जुवारी एग्रोकेमिकल इंडस्ट्रीन जो ब्लास्ट जाल्लो आसा तो एक म्हाका दिसता थोडे कामदार थिंगा कटिंग करताले आनी आमोनियाचो टँक घोडेक कटिंग करता तेन्ना ब्लास्ट जालो. आतां एक we are feeling very sad that 3 precious lives have been lost in this industry. आमी फर्स्ट मेयान डिमांड केलेले की वर्कराचे वेजीस पळय आसा ते डबल जावपा जाय, मिनिमम वेजीस वाडपा जाय, तशें हेल्थ सेफ्टी सॅनिटायझेशन पळय आसा ते खंय ना खंय सगळे कंपनी एक प्रायोरिटी घेयना. आनी आयज पळय लॅप्सीस जालेले आसा इज अ व्हेरी क्लियर इंडिकेशन that a lapses लागून आयज 3 लाइफ मेलेले आसा.
Yeah, so this plant was not was in operation obviously, but there was a shutdown to clean the tanks of the Zoria Agro. And we must understand that most of this work is not done by staffers. They are done by outsourced contractors who come in and do this work. And these contractors, of course, take the contract, but they engage their own laborers. And it's not always possible or not always necessary for these owners, these contractors who manage them, to check whether these people are skilled or not, whether they have the required skill sets to carry out the work for which they are contracted for. Because many of these people come from all over the place. In fact, out of the 3 people who died, one was from Mednipur, one was from Punjab, and one person was from another state. There were three people from 3 different states. We've got a box there giving details of where the 3 laborers were from. Okay. So
Bihar, one was from Bihar.
One was Bihar, one was from Purva Mednipur, and one was from Punjab. So there were 3. So these are 3 people who. So the idea is that these people may not be knowing the wherewithal to do it, but ultimately, when you're doing work of such a sensitive and potentially dangerous nature, you need to have a proper supervisor from the plant itself to see what's going on. And the technique that they were using to clean it was obviously flawed. You needed to, as we understand, that there was some cold technique which was supposed to be put into place, but they used a hot technique and used fire there, which led to the explosion. These are very rudimentary feedback that we've got and we've reported. We don't know the exact science of it, but obviously there was an element of negligence, and obviously because of which people have been arrested, taken to task, cases have been registered, and they have to pay. But yes, industrial negligence is a very, very big issue and needs to be looked at very closely.
On 5th of May, we have a story in the Herald, which is basically Herald scrutiny, where the lens has been put on the dumps which are being passed off as auctioned ore and sold at throwaway prices, causing a major loss to the people.
See, the Supreme Court in its writ petition 435/1, which was the February 2014 judgment, followed by the next judgment where the renewals of 88 leases were cancelled. In both these judgments, there were 2 very critical observations made, especially I'm referring to the 435/1, which is known as the Goa Foundation 1 judgment. In that particular judgment, they had very specifically said that dump mining is banned in Goa. You cannot be doing any kind of mining with dumps. When there are dumps, you cannot be mining. Transportation of ore has been allowed, but transportation of ore which are not dumps, there are all excess ore which is lying over and above, which were not transported. What the mining companies are doing is they are transporting dumps which are passed off as stacks. Stacks are old mining. Okay, when you pass them off as stacks. So what is interesting is that Manohar Parrikar, this was one of his last speeches in the assembly. He had essentially said that in 2 leases, 5/49 and 13/49, if I'm not mistaken, 2 leases in Pisurle. In these 2 leases, where he had said a particular amount of ore is there. I think he has spoken about 617 metric tons, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, he had said that this much of ore is lying in that particular lease. These 2 TC numbers which I just mentioned to you. Now, when they called for auctions, this 617 became 2.22 lakh tons. Metric tons, sorry. How can that be? How can ore suddenly multiply? The ore is not giving birth to more ore, no? So when you are saying this much ore is lying, how can a particular TC have more ore? Which means that this is dumped ore brought from some other area or other lease and dumped here and passed off as stacks. What is even more is that this 2.22 lakh ore gets auctioned in 2 phases. 1.64 in one phase, the remaining in the next phase. Even after auctioning the 2.2, now 2.22 minus 2.22 is 0 metric tons. How do you have another auction in the next phase where you add another 100 metric tons on the same lease? So, which obviously means that dumped ore is being brought there and transported. This is again from the various petitions that have been filed, to which I'm sure there'll be some answer. Some hearing will be done on this, but these are critical questions that need to be answered, which means that you are actually doing dump transportation, which is completely against 2 Supreme Court orders.
Okay, then a related item on May the 7th, where looking at the way forward now, there has been a long-standing inaction on the mining front, and everybody is looking at the way forward. Now the Mineral Corporation has been created, but the subsequent work has not been done in terms of appointing personnel, drawing up the rules and all that stuff. And there is a fear that once the auction is done, the same players will come back and start exporting ore.
Yeah. For Goa's mining industry, then what happened in the last 40 years? Worse, we are very clear about this, that the government would be foolish to conduct an auction in which companies like JSW or Adani or Vedanta will get the upper hand. Because then mining will never be conducted in a sustainable way. And they will finish up Goa much faster than the present line of mine owners who, are, because of the scale, because they are much smaller, have not been able to do complete unrestrained havoc on Goa's environment only because they were reasonably small. Once the big actors come, then there is nothing to prevent large-scale mining, uncontrolled mining which does not follow any environment norms from taking hold in the state of Goa. This is we are giving this warning publicly to everybody who will listen, because tomorrow when this happens, at least we will be there and people will recall that this is what the Goa Foundation has said before the auction is taking place. That you should not go for auction, you give it to the Goa Corporation and let the Goa Corporation auction only the contracts for removal of the ore and give them back to the corporation.
That is the second part. I'll address the main part. Now, again, the Supreme Court says that auction will happen only through the Goa Mineral Corporation. The Goa Mineral Corporation has to be created. What do? First, a bill is passed. A bill has been passed. Goa Mineral Corporation has been created. But when you create, you need to form the rules of the corporation. You only said there's going to be a chairman, there's going to be a managing director, there's going to be a board of directors. But those proper rules of functioning have to be framed. Right now, if you file an RTI, you will only, and say that you need the rules, you will only get the draft rules. Now, draft rules are not rules. Now, these draft rules have to be studied, they have to be passed, after which the rules have to be framed, and once they are completely framed, they come into action. If you do not form the rules and the rules are not finalized, how can you conduct any auction without your mineral corporation being in place? And that can only be in place when the rules are finalized. So this whole process is going to take 6 to 7 months. On what basis the government is saying that we'll start mining immediately and we'll call for auctions? Because the body that has to conduct the auction is not even been formed, and that process again will take 6 months. So my idea is that people should not be kept in the dark, people should not be fooled, or you very categorically said these are the timelines, we'll form the rules within 2 weeks, we'll pass it in 3 weeks and we'll have the auction in 4 weeks. Come out and say that, but give that confidence to the people.
Also, there is this lingering fear that, again the mining companies will bid for it, especially big companies from outside, and then they would export the ore themselves and we'll go back to square one.
See, that fear is very much there. The point is that when you have an auction, you can have Dr. Freddy doing the auction on Sujay Gupta's behalf. I can be doing an auction on Devendra's behalf. It can be done on anybody's behalf. So people can form these caucuses and come and be a part of the auction. That danger is always there. But it is for the Mineral Corporation to actually do a bit of filtering and figure out that genuine players come and do the auctioning. Now, the auctioning, to my mind, should essentially be done by parties who are not involved in or completely clear of all criminal cases and other cases. Because if you are a company which is already facing notices for recovery, or if there are other things pending in court, then prima facie they should be morally, ethically and otherwise told to clear that and then then come back into the scene. But irrespective of whatever happens, the mining operations need to be controlled and executed by grassroots people who are into mining, who know what mining is, because in so many years there is a large number of people who know the basics of extraction, transportation, beneficiation, grade upgradation. All this is there. There are experts there to do it.
Yeah.
So all this should be under the control of the Mineral Corporation, and they should be in charge of the entire process, and ultimately the exports should lie in the hand of the Mineral Corporation, not in the hand of any other company.
And then the big news of the week, May 10, the Supreme Court judgment which says no double tracking through the eco-sensitive Western Ghats, and basically they have withdrawn the NOC which was given by the Wildlife Board for a particular section from Casarvane to Pule in Goa.
हो जो प्रोजेक्ट जो आसा हो गोंयच्या पर्यावरणाचे हिता भायर आसा, गोंयचे लायव्हलीहूडाचे हिता भायर आसा आनी गोंयचे इकॉनॉमीचे हिता भायर आसा. सो हो जो प्रोजेक्ट जो आसा हो फकत कोल हाडपा खातीर. It is very clearly said in the Sagarmala volume 6 that this project, double tracking, is been built exclusively to transport coal to the other state. So आमी कितें म्हणटा, तुमी हो कोल हब करनाका. हो एक ट्युरिस्टीक डेस्टिनेशन आसा, आमी वर्ल्ड फेमस आसा ट्युरिजमाक लागून. तुमी हो जो प्रोजेक्ट पळय आसा दुसऱ्या स्टेटीन व्हरा.
Today the Supreme Court has upheld the recommendation of the CEC to scrap the doubling of the southwestern railway tracks in totality, and has revoked or rather rejected the approval given by the Wildlife Board for the double tracking. Time and time again the judiciary has upheld what the civil society has been saying all along, that these projects, the tree linear projects, are the most destructive of the kind that Goa has encountered over the years.
A humble appeal to our Environment Minister and the Forest Minister and the Chief Minister, Government of Goa, and आमचो appeal to the State Wildlife Advisory Board, please do not proceed with reapplication. Please respect and accept the verdict of the Supreme Court that has been given.
हॅपियस्ट डे सगळ्या गोंयकारांक जे डबल ट्रॅकिंगाचे अगेन्स्ट झगडले, आमचे जे गोंयकार जेंच्यांनी केसी घेतले, जो गोंयकार त्या दिसा चांदोर उबो आसलेलो कॅन्डल घेवन कितें निशेध करपाक, ताका हांव सॅल्यूट करता आनी देव बरें करूं म्हणटा तुमकां. आयज जे सुप्रीम कोर्टाचें डिसिजन येयलां, मायंड ब्लोईंग विक्ट्री, तुमची गोंयकारांची विक्ट्री, आमच्या गोंयकारांचो विजय हो, ज्या लोकांनी दातान धरलेले सोडूंक ना. आनी आयज हे सुप्रीम कोर्टान जे डिसिजन दिलां, कितें ईच एंड एवरी गोंयकार कितें ही विक्ट्री डिजर्व करता.
So I'll just explain this. See, the entire stretch of the double tracking of the southwestern railways carried out by the Rail Vikas Nigam is the total length of that is 342 kilometers, out of which the Goa stretch is 90 kilometers. Now the region in the Western Ghats which goes to these wildlife sanctuaries, which is the Mole and the Bhagwan Mahavir Wildlife Sanctuary and the National Park, that area is about 29 kilometers. Okay, the National Board of Wildlife, based on the recommendations of the State Board of Wildlife Standing Committee, in its 56th meeting had given a clearance, wildlife clearance, to having the double track in that 29 kilometer section. The entire petition was, the CEC was also formed, and the entire mandate of the CEC was to see whether that wildlife clearance in this particular area was valid or not, and the CEC made several observations both about this area and about the entire project itself. Both economical and ecological observations were made. The Supreme Court has, what they have done is they have accepted the recommendation of the Standing Committee of the National Board of Wildlife to withdraw the or revoke the wildlife clearance of this particular section, which means that through the Western Ghats you cannot have double tracking again until and unless they reapply again and get the license back. But the rest of the area, double tracking in the rest of the area is still open. The project has not been cancelled, and especially in the 7-kilometer stretch in coastal South Goa where double tracking has already happened, heritage houses have already been affected. Land has already been acquired. None of that has been changed. So people were jumping yesterday with I mean, I don't blame them. There was a lot of happiness they felt that way. I feel the happiness should be halved, and you should restrict your happiness. You should be happy about this particular section, but the fight to scrap the entire project is continuing and should continue.
Yeah. Okay. So that is all that we have in this week on our program, The Week That Was. We hope that you enjoyed this program and were able to catch up with the headlines in your busy schedule. I thank my guest, Mr. Sujay Gupta, for being with us, for sharing his insights and analysis into the news. Thank you for watching Herald TV.